Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of GSU ENI Radio here at Georgia State University in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. And I am so excited to be part of this show. The Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute at Georgia State is one of my favorite locations to do this show, and we do it every month here. And this episode is going to be a fun one. We have folks from the Institute for Biomedical Sciences here, and we're going to kick it off with Elizabeth Eichinger. Welcome.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, what's your role?
So I work as the Undergraduate Program Coordinator in the Institute for Biomedical Sciences. I work with all undergraduate students to help them determine whether our program is a good fit for them, what types of classes to take, and what they should be doing to prepare for their future careers. Now,
what is the Institute for Biomedical Sciences? Like, what does that entail?
So it was founded in 2014 as part of Georgia State's strategic plan that recommended enhanced contributions to sciences, health, and medical education. So we have 4 research centers. Our faculty is awarded roughly $20 million annually in grants.
That you get to spend in any way you see fit.
I wish. And some of our more prominent work includes research on the flu, Ebola, RVS, inflammation, and recently we secured a lab that's examining STIs, more specifically gonorrhea. So a few years ago in fall 2016, after doing research primarily for a couple of years, we went into the educational realm, first offering a master's degree in biomedical enterprise. And then in fall 2017, we followed up with a PhD program. Lastly, in spring of 2019, we began offering a Bachelor's of Interdisciplinary Studies in Biomedical Science and Enterprise with classes that started this semester. So that's the program that I work with specifically. And if you are a current Georgia State freshman or sophomore, it's not too late to jump in our program.
So now these are people that are going along in biology or in the sciences. Like, how do they get involved in this kind of?
So there definitely needs to be some aptitude for science in our program. You do have a strong science foundation. We pair it with classes here in the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute, as well as classes about philosophy and ethics, because a lot of improvements in human health are related to ethics, and there are a lot of legal boundaries that one must know about to be successful. And then within the Institute for Biomedical Sciences, we offer coursework that ties together all of these elements to really give our students a foundation in the healthcare ecosystem and all the roles that fit into it.
So now when a student's going, they're coming to GSU, they're a student, and then in their head they think, oh, I'm going to be in the sciences. Like, at what point should they start talking to you and your team to see the right path for them to go down?
Well, they could even start as early when they're not even at Georgia State. I've met with many high school seniors and their parents, to talk about whether this could be a good fit for them. We have an appointment-only office. Students are welcome to come by and discuss their goals academically and what they'd like to do after college to see if this would be a good fit.
So now what do those conversations look like typically when they're coming in high school? Like, they don't know anything, right? Like, they don't know, like, in their head they think they know things, but practically they probably not talk to a lot of people that are actually doing some of this work.
Yeah, so a discussion like that would really start with, what do you think that you want to do when you're done with college, which I know is a big commitment, for a 16 or 17-year-old. But we kind of work from there and talking about, a lot of people do you want to go to medical school and become doctors and open their own practice. But even within itself, that involves a lot of complex business decisions. Where do you put your business? How people pay for healthcare, which is definitely a hot topic today.
And today it might be different in 7 years, right?
Exactly. So, also the legal implications, like how do you train your staff and HIPAA? So it's something that to them might look very straightforward, like, oh, this is a science career, but being a doctor who owns their own practice definitely takes into account an interdisciplinary perspective.
And then also, if you want to be a researcher, that's a different animal too.
Exactly. So research, you might be tinkering away in the lab and you have success there, but the next step would be to speak to investors and
to commercialize it.
Exactly. So, you can't be proficient in just science. Like, you have to have presentation skills, communication skills, all of these things that are outside of just this very narrow focus of an academic discipline.
And then is that where you come in to help them navigate some of that?
Yeah. So, we kind of talk through their goals and where they see themselves. We are very professional development oriented in our programs. Our master's program, which has been around for a few years, is very similar to our bachelor's program in terms of its structure. Within those classes, industry professionals are actually coming in to speak to our students to discuss their career paths and how they can chart their own path to pursue a similar career. We also encourage students at the bachelor's level to complete internships. At the master's level, they're required to do so. Mm-hmm. So we try to put them in contact with people who they've identified an interest and a passion to go into these specific fields.
And then what does the kind of an internship look like in the bachelor's level?
Well, at the bachelor's level, you may not be getting into the depth of work that you would as a master's student, but we anticipate that our students, when they start their internships, they could be doing more intense lab things, but we also, as part of our program, are opening them up to different types of careers outside of just labs or in a doctor's office. So really honing in on also the legal careers as they relate to science and also business careers. So, you could be shadowing someone who works in regulatory affairs or a medical science liaison who may not be actively a practitioner in a lab or a doctor's office, but are working more on presenting and understanding legal aspects. So, it could really differ what that day-to-day experience looks like, but the idea is to open up people's eyes to a plethora of careers that can help improve human health.
Now, when you're talking to young people and they kind of have a vision of how they'd like or how they see themselves at that young age, what percentage kind of follow through and actually go in that same direction they anticipated when they were, freshmen here? Is there going to be some change kind of built in? Like, you might think, when I'm 18, I want to do this, but I start doing it and I'm start doing the work, and then I maybe kind of deviate a bit.
Well, again, a lot of our students come in with the goal of eventually attending medical school, and I am certain that some of them, because they are brilliant, will get there. But the reality is that every year, only 39% of applicants are accepted to medical school.
Really?
Yes. So a lot of people...
That's not usually in the brochure, right?
No. And, it's not a matter of this is a plan B or a fallback plan, but it's really considering a variety of roles that you could be passionate and excited about, that are outside of just medical school. Or even if you are the person who goes to medical school and loves it and is passionate about it, how does the rest of your career look? Are you going to, work in a hospital, have your own practice? Or are you going to, help develop a medical device that can save lives or improve people's day-to-day quality of life? It's not just your initial step that you take out of college, but it's more thinking long-term in terms of future-proofing your career and maybe some of the next steps that you can take.
And is that where kind of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute comes into play, where it gives them maybe an entrepreneurial, at least a taste of the entrepreneurial lifestyle that maybe they didn't think that was part of their path, but is now, I guess, part of almost every business person's path? Yes,
I would say so. And I think especially just from the early part of their college career, really cultivating that problem-solving mindset of looking for problems that need solutions and understand how to properly vet ideas and bringing them from, oh, this is a brilliant thought that I had to, oh, it's actually in front of a patient. So I think that, it really cultivates that mindset of looking at the world through a different lens, one of continuous quality improvement.
And when you're talking to potential students coming to GSU, is that kind of part of the secret sauce of GSU, is that have that kind of entrepreneurial mindset built into the DNA of the university?
I mean, I think Georgia State's very dedicated to the success of its graduates, first and foremost. And I think that they are definitely trying to be innovative in how they prepare students and also responsive to what the employers actually want from recent graduates. I have some research with me. Peter Capelli is his name. He is a professor at the Wharton School of Management, and he has done research in regards to how employers perceive the skill sets of STEM grads. And while, one would think that they would be more focused on their technical knowledge, it's really the transferable skills, the leadership abilities, the persuasive communication, teamwork that they feel that these graduates are lacking. So, by having students take classes through the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute, by taking classes related to legal and ethical aspects
or
in biomedical
public speaking,
science.
presenting, all these kind of maybe softer skills.
Yeah, they don't realize that, we're actually cultivating them to be more marketable.
Right.
So,
and it's a lot of times they think like, look, I'm knowledgeable, I have the information, but some of these other skills are important because that becomes table stakes at some point, right? It's just the knowledge.
When everybody's coming to the table with the same foundation in terms of education, it's like, what is it that makes you unique for opportunities?
Right. So now you mentioned entrepreneurs and commercializing ideas, and you mentioned a little bit about the faculty. Talk about who you brought with you today.
So I brought with me our undergraduate lecturer, Zachary Saylor. He is teaching 2 classes this semester to our undergraduate students, careers in biomedical science and scientific communication.
And welcome, Zachary.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So now talk about your involvement with the Institute for Biomedical Sciences.
Sure. So I was brought on to the Institute just this past summer to start developing courses for the undergraduate curriculum. And so we've developed 2 courses for the fall semester, careers in biomedical sciences and scientific communication that we just started having students in those classes, and things are going really well. So we're trying to give students in the careers class an idea of the breadth of careers that can be available to them with a biomedical sciences degree. And in scientific communication, we're really trying to hone those soft skills that employers are finding so useful in recent graduates.
Now, when you're talking to students, what is there anything kind of a managing their expectations element to when you're presenting them with the different options? Are you opening their eyes to things that maybe they hadn't considered before?
I think so. I think that's a big part of the careers class. I know in my own academic experience, there wasn't a lot of knowledge out there about careers that are available to especially undergraduates with a bachelor's degree outside of taking the academic PhD route and outside of the medical going to med school and being a doctor route.
So what are some things? What are some other paths?
So there's a lot more available than these students realize. We have the class broken down into 3 modules that are focusing on sort of big branches of careers that students can take. So we have them focusing on academic careers like being a professor or a researcher, working at something like the CDC, or even being a school teacher, so K through 12 education. The medical module is focusing on things that students already expect, like being a private practice doctor, but also on things like being a pathologist or working in medical devices or medical consulting that they may not have experienced or had any exposure to in the past. And then finally, the business and law module, where they're getting exposure to developing scientific entrepreneurial ideas and technology transfer, regulatory affairs, those kind of things.
So now what brought you to GSU?
So I think it's a really interesting program. The Institute has the unique ability to be very flexible and innovative in the way that they develop their curriculum and teach the students. And that was something that really attracted me to the program, the ability to really experiment with my own pedagogy and teaching techniques and deliver the best experience that I could to these students.
And what drew you as a young person to this career path?
So that was something that I actually sort of, we talked about students finding their way in their career and using the undergraduate education to maybe manage their expectations and find out what things may or may not work for them. So as an undergraduate, I was actually pre-med for a long time. And when I shadowed a private practice doctor, I discovered that really wasn't a path that I could see myself in.
So as a young person in your head, you're like, I'm going to be a doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So you're like heads down, I'm going to be a doctor. And these are the classes I take and this is what I do.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until you actually shadowed a doctor where you're like, oh, this is what a day in the life of a doctor. Like that was a big eye-opening experience for you?
Exactly. And you realize when you do those one-on-one shadowing experiences that maybe that's not the thing for you.
But how far along were you? Like if you would have shadowed them at 16, would you have maybe chosen a different career?
I think so. I think the earlier that you can get that experience, the better off you're going to be. I think your interaction with the careers, especially something like doctor or researcher, is very limited
to
in
what
your
you're
high
watching
school.
On TV.
Exactly. So yeah,
movie,
you're not
right?
seeing what it's really like. You're seeing what sort of it's portrayed as, and that's not a a real expectation. Exactly.
So now when that happened and you shadowed the doctor and you're like, is this really what it, like, were you like, what have I done now where I'm so far in? Like, were you kind of panicked? Like, what were you thinking at that time?
I was a little, maybe not panicked, but a little bit like, surprised, right? It's something I didn't expect.
You had been aiming for years at this one thing, and now you're going, maybe this one thing isn't right for me.
Exactly. And so you have to just reevaluate what you thought you liked and what you have maybe now discovered that you don't like as much as you thought you did. And I was fortunate to be able to get some undergraduate research experience that led me down the academic path.
Right. And you're like, wow, this feels better. This is a better fit for me personally.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that's what you're trying to help your students with, right? To make those decisions quicker and more effectively.
Yeah. And so the careers in biomedical sciences class is really focused at the beginning of the curriculum that these students are going to take so that they get a really early exposure to what these career paths are really like. And we're giving them that exposure through speakers who are people who are professionals in those careers and can really say, I know this is what you expect this career to be, but let me tell you what I actually do every day. The bad,
the ugly, kind
exactly.
of as quickly as possible so you can make an informed decision.
Right. And then they still have some time to reevaluate their priorities in line of the new data that they've discovered.
Now, Elizabeth, sometimes people are like, I make these kind of, that's a big shift. I mean, you were lucky that there was an opportunity to shift into something that was still in the field, but sometimes do people just say, forget it, I'm out of the sciences altogether? I mean, does that ever happen? Or is there kind of science-minded, they're staying kind of in that lane?
I mean, I think a lot of people who have an aptitude for science and are passionate about helping people usually, find a way for that to happen. In the outreach that Zach and I have done to secure speakers for the undergraduate class and also build our network, we hear a very common theme over and over again from these accomplished professionals. And I didn't know my job existed when I was an undergrad, which, they are very successful now. They work in lucrative and rewarding areas, but, the power of information and knowing your options, it's like, how could you have steered things a little bit differently? What aptitudes could you have trained a little bit better?
Right.
And I mean, these people are not unsuccessful by any means, but it's really just a matter of, someone not feeling like they can't find a spot. It's learning about all the different roles in the healthcare ecosystem because it really is so broad. And
it changes so rapidly.
Yes. And I think that's another thing to note too, is that, as technology really takes over more mundane tasks that we do, it's the human brain power, the add-on, the looking at things from different perspectives of entrepreneurship and, understanding legal aspects and business aspects of scientific discovery. It's like you make yourself more valuable when you're already thinking in an interdisciplinary sense.
And that is the key word, right? Valuable is how to become valuable to the person that's writing your check.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so the more skills you have in the wider area, that makes you can land in different areas.
I mean, that's also being valuable and happy in your career too, right. And also being valuable to being a piece of, bringing better quality of life to people through improving human health.
So now we also have with us Corey Andrews. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you.
Now, how do you fit into this puzzle?
So my way of coming into this puzzle was a little bit unique. So I actually interviewed with a professor who is the graduate program coordinator for the chemistry department here at Georgia State back last August. And that was after a time of thinking for me where I was considering going and getting my PhD after doing some PhD interviews. And I wasn't as successful as I thought. And so I started thinking about exactly what I wanted to do with my future because I had just finished my undergraduate here at Georgia State in neuroscience. And so I interviewed with him and I gave him my resume, and in my resume, I had several different experiences in my undergrad, working jobs that pertain to business, but loosely. And so, he saw that and, he mentioned that, his lab specifically had licensed a test to, see if somebody had the flu and to what extent they had the flu, with a biotech company. And he was interested in, pursuing other goals with other tests that his lab was developing, and thought that I had some I fit that puzzle in some way. So that's how I got started with it.
So now I want to go back a little further. So you're in high school and you're good at science and math, right?
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. I was pretty good. Yeah.
So then you're like, okay, I'm going to get a career that touches that in some way. So you pick neuroscience at that point?
That's what I did in my undergraduate.
And then you were like, I'm going to be a doctor, or you're going to be a researcher?
Well, I was thinking about one day I wanted to be a professor. That was
professor.
At the time
okay,
what I
I'm
wanted.
going to be a professor in neuroscience. And you were interested in neuroscience.
Right, I was.
And then GSU has a great program, so this is a logical place for you.
Right, and like they were saying earlier, there's when you're an undergraduate, there's sort of this. Your professors compel you to, if you're in an academic institution, to continue going down that academia route, and they almost make you feel like that's the. I mean, it's not necessarily. That's because that's their job.
Well, that was their path too.
That's their path, but it's like you guys said, you don't know what is out there as an undergraduate.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right. And so
you're seeing a lot of people who obviously are PhDs because they're teaching you.
Exactly.
So they're PhDs. So then it becomes a logical assumption for you to go, I guess I'll be a PhD and teach other people like me that are interested in this, or I'll go down research or something along those lines. Now, at some point when you said, you know what, this isn't going to work out for me, were you disappointed? Were you freaking out? Were like, what were you like, okay, I'm going to make this pivot? Like,
I think I just had to go through a period of time where I really assessed, what makes me unique, what I am really actually good at. And, and I started to realize just because I am really good at communicating with people, especially about things I'm passionate about, such as science and technology, doesn't necessarily mean that the only thing I can do is be a professor. So that's why I started thinking, there are people in the business realm who have, who aren't educated with science. They chose to go down, the business route. And so having somebody who can be a liaison for that becomes increasingly more important as science becomes increasingly more complex. So,
right. And then, as Elizabeth said, it becomes more valuable. Right. Because now you have this unique set of skills that maybe people don't have because you have this kind of neuroscience background and the medical background.
Right.
And then now for you, was this like an aha moment where you're like, wow, this does now I've separated myself from a lot of people by going down this path?
I suppose it's hard to say because the story isn't over for me, but I feel though that over the past year where I've been really getting the opportunity to hone on my skills in terms of, being able to do a business pitch or being able to write a business plan or, just getting to talk with investors, different things that you don't normally get to do if you're just doing it for a class assignment or, for school. It really does. I've been reflecting a lot about it lately, and it really does feel, like I'm gaining skills that, I wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to get otherwise. So it's exciting. I really am excited about it.
Well, I think it's a wonderful example of you're going down. This is business, is pivoting. You have to, when you get new information, you have to make changes. So you got new information. Now you're making changes and pivoted, but you're still using basically the same stuff you knew, but you're just kind of reframing it in a slightly different manner that makes you more valuable to this. Now you're with an organization, or you're starting an organization called SafeStrip, where they're able to take your skills and plug it into this puzzle to help them achieve their goal of. Tell us a little bit about SafeStrip.
All right, I'll tell you. Okay, so it's super fascinating. So the way the glucose meters work is essentially you take a sample of blood and you put it on a test strip, and the test strip responds in an electrochemical fashion and creates a current that can be read on a certain, provides some sort of magnitude of current on the glucose meter. So it can correspond to whether you have a high level of blood glucose concentration or low blood glucose concentration.
And who cares about that?
Right. So
diabetics.
So diabetics typically use those glucose meters, but what our lab's been able to accomplish is essentially creating a probe that can repurpose the glucose meters to read other biomarkers that are implicated in illnesses, diseases, medical conditions, what have you.
So beyond diabetics.
Beyond diabetics.
Right. And then, so where's the opportunity for that?
So the opportunities for that include being able to provide fast and simple diagnostic devices for people that may live in areas that are dead zones and don't have a lot of medical coverage, or even third world countries. It's just, there's a lot of diagnostic tools out there that are complex and expensive. And so being able to provide that sort of information in today's day and age at a way that you can go to a CVS and buy a glucose meter for $10, $20 and be able to see exactly where you stand in some of our different tests, that's an amazing opportunity.
And that can benefit people all over the world.
Exactly.
Because it's affordable and it's easy.
Exactly.
And then so your unique skills can make this company go.
I believe so.
So now that's a big departure from where you started as I'm going to be a professor, right?
That's very much true.
Where a professor, I mean, you would impact, however many students you have, but this could change, a whole third world country.
That's very true. And I don't think that necessarily means that any of my aspirations from before aren't. I feel like as you go through life, you go through, different, phases of what you're doing at that point in time. And I think, you don't necessarily have to be a teacher to teach. And so, you get those opportunities through, being, maybe just telling you on the air, like how a glucose meter works. And, it's the exact same thing that I really enjoy doing. Right. But in this case, I get to do it in a way that like helps other people and it's honestly pretty exciting.
Now for you as an individual, you thought maybe you'd go down this academic path, and now you're working with Launch GSU, the startup incubator.
Yes.
Now you might not have anticipated that when you started at GSU.
Not really. Actually, I'd heard about Launch GSU from somebody. They was just telling me about, because a lot of the news about us being the number 2 innovation school in the country. That was one of the things that was cited, and I really got to see exactly why that's the case, because Launch GSU is probably one of the best kept secrets here on campus, in my opinion.
So now, any advice for students that are starting out at bachelor's and they think they know where they want to go and how they want the story to end? Any advice for them to say, maybe you can broaden your horizons or think about things a little differently and maybe get information that, because when you started out, you think this is going to, get a degree in this and it's going to lead to that. You got to be open to different things and opportunities, because you don't know how the story's going to end, like you said. Well,
I guess what I would say to an undergraduate just starting out is to listen to your skills and listen to your strengths. That's something I don't know if enough people tell, young people nowadays, but it's super important, because you can spend all of your time trying to, like, say you're somewhat skilled at something. You can spend all your time sort of crafting that skill and becoming a master at it. But I think everybody's endowed with something that they're just naturally pretty good at. And so for me, I'm really good at being able to communicate ideas and just form relationships with people. I know for a fact that I'm not the most organized person in the world. So I also, that's where my weaknesses come in. And so, maybe something like, managing, an office isn't for me. And, that's just an example, but, it's just, you have to be considerate about those things, because ultimately, you want to be a key asset to whatever business or company that you're a part of.
So now that level of self-awareness is important, right? To kind of assess your own strengths and weaknesses. And then you find you're better served kind of nurturing those strengths and kind of leaning into those strengths to kind of wring out the most out of that.
Yes.
And then now for SafeStrip, what's next for your team?
So we're still in the process of doing customer discovery. Through Launch GSU, I had an instructor in their startup semester class. His name is Ricky Hunter, amazing fellow. And one of the things he told us is, you could spend, all of your assets and money and everything on, all the stuff you think you need to run a startup, like, an office or, a car or trips or whatever. But at the end of the day, the cost of being able to do, customer discovery and learn, is this needed? And who needs it? And those important questions that it takes to start up a business. That's, if you get that stuff done ahead of time, then, it's valuable, and it'll help you out, going forward. And so really we're focusing on that aspect right now. We're looking at, trying to, integrate, other new cutting edge technologies into the equation of being able to read these biomarkers. So there's a lot going on, and we're just, it's one of those things where if you're trying to launch a biomedical startup with all the things that to be considered, such as FDA approval and certain aspects like clinical trials, that it's a long process. If you're putting yourself into that situation, you have to be aware that you're going to be in it for the long haul.
Now, personally, how has kind of this startup world been for you? Have you enjoyed being immersed in this, creating something from nothing? It's different. I mean, it's different than what you've been doing previously.
It's amazing because one of the things you learn is that you're telling a story, and that's always it's an art. You have to learn how to craft your story in a way that people are receptive to it, and I guess what was interesting, I participated in the TIE Atlanta pitch startup competition for the university level last April. I actually did the preliminary round in February and then the final round in April, and we were the only team from Georgia State to move on to that final round. And it was amazing because not even just for myself, I'm monitoring my own personal growth, but there was actually two teams that I got to see do their pitch in the preliminary and the final round, and they really took what the judges said and learn how to craft their story even better in a way that, helped them become more successful, startup, entrepreneurs. So yeah, I like the startup world. It's nice. It's exciting to see people grow. And
now, what about the Institute for Biomedical Sciences here at GSU? Have they been helpful?
So, it's interesting because so the way this all happened is that I sort of learned about them once I was in the process of doing this, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. And so I actually, this semester, even though it's not a part of my curriculum, I have these credits that I can use to go towards my curriculum. And so one of the classes I'm taking right now is their business translational, master's level class. And I'm actually learning a lot in that class so far too. So I've actually integrated some of theirs into my own chemistry curriculum, which is one of the cool things about going to Georgia State.
So now, Elizabeth, that's a great example about this interdisciplinary kind of aspect of this world, right? To be able to kind of go across these different skills and to be able to leverage your skills in all these different ways to open up opportunity that it didn't even occur. That's
I agree. And the class that Corey mentioned, it very closely models the class that Zach teaches, the careers in biomedical sciences, right, except our master's and PhD students are taking it. So again, I'm sure, Corey, you're going to meet all kinds of industry professionals that your paths might not have crossed if you hadn't looked at more of an interdisciplinary approach to your education.
And that's where serendipity can happen, and that's where these mashups happen, and people take an idea that is kind of works in one area and then combines it in a different way somewhere else, and that's where discoveries come from. So, I mean, it's a great philosophy that makes a lot of sense, and it must be rewarding to see some of it kind of coming to fruition where you're getting a startup and commercializing, and that's exactly what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Mm-hmm. So
now, Corey, if somebody wanted to learn about SafeStrip, is Is there a way to find out about it yet? Or
there's actually, so we have a website. It's one of the Create GSU websites. It's Create GSU. Make sure I'm saying it exactly right. It's the SIYER. So SIYER.gsucreate.org. You can go on there and you can see all the publications that our lab has come out with. There's some details about Dr. Eichinger, who's been here at Georgia State since 2011, became full-time professor at 2016. And, he's with the Center for Therapeutics and Diagnostics. And so it just has a bunch of information that people can learn about exactly how this mechanism works and, and exactly, what we're doing currently and what we plan to do. So
good stuff. And Zach, for you to see somebody like Corey kind of do this, that's kind of speaking to your work as well, right?
It is. It's, excuse me. It's really exciting. 'Cause Corey, you mentioned that some of the things that really drove your, sort of what made you personally enjoy the startup world was seeing people grow and watching people learn and things like that. And that really mirrors some of the things that I enjoy about being a lecturer, about being a teacher. And so I think that you can kind of throw that back to, getting exposure to a couple of different careers early on, and then playing to your strengths. So you may find that you're really good at communicating and you like to see people learn, but there might be things about being a lecturer that don't appeal to you, and you can transfer those skills to another career that if you didn't have exposure early on through a course like we're offering, you may not have even known about. And then those skills may have sort of fallen by the wayside if you don't know what to do with them. So I'm happy to see that you've found a niche for your unique skill set that really plays to your strengths and is personally fulfilling. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm hoping for all of my students.
Thank you.
And then, Elizabeth, if somebody wanted to learn more about the Institute for Biomedical Sciences,
they can visit our website at biomedical.gsu.edu or follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, GSU IBMS.
And then you're open to talking to students as young as high school to...
Oh, yeah, of course. I've met, like I said, with many high school students and their parents and just kind of helping them determine whether this is a good fit for them. It's really all about understanding how you fit into the healthcare ecosystem, not necessarily that we have a degree for you.
Right. And that's the beauty of this. Good stuff. Well, thank you all for sharing your story today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on GSU ENI Radio.